In a world where wealth whispers power and language bridges souls, a dinner at Tokyo's elite Kaiseki Ryrie restaurant unfolded a moment no one expected. At the head of the table sat Aiko Tanaka, a billionaire CEO whose tech empire reshaped global markets. Her words in Japanese met with blank stares from her international guests. Plates clinked, sake flowed, but the room felt heavy with misunderstanding, until a young black waitress, unassuming in her crisp uniform, stepped forward and answered Aiko in flawless Japanese, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade through silk. Aiko Tanaka sat at the head of the long, polished mahogany table in the private dining room of Kaiseki Ryrie, one of Tokyo's most exclusive restaurants. The air carried the faint aroma of yuzu and freshly steamed rice, and the soft glow of paper lanterns cast delicate shadows on the shoji screens. Aiko, in her late 40s, wore a tailored navy suit that spoke of understated elegance, her jet-black hair pulled into a sleek bun. Her presence commanded the room, not because of her wealth, though her company, Tanaka Tech, had redefined artificial intelligence, but because of the quiet intensity in her dark eyes. She was a woman who had built an empire from nothing, a fact that lingered in the minds of 13 international executives seated around her. The dinner was meant to seal a historic partnership. Tanaka Tech was on the verge of launching a new AI platform that could translate human emotions into actionable data, a technology that promised to revolutionize industries from healthcare to marketing. The executives, hailing from New York, London, Dubai, and Singapore, had flown in to finalize the deal. They were a mix of venture capitalists, tech moguls, and policy advisors, each accustomed to commanding their own boardrooms. Yet, as Aiko began her opening remarks in Japanese, a language she insisted on using to honor her roots, the room grew restless. "Thank you all for joining me tonight," Aiko began, her voice steady and precise. She spoke in Japanese, her words flowing with the cadence of someone who had spent decades perfecting her craft. This partnership is not just about technology. It's about understanding the human spirit, bridging cultures, and creating a future where empathy drives progress. The executives nodded politely, but their eyes betrayed confusion. Some glanced at their translators, who scrambled to keep up, whispering hurried English translations into earpieces. Others fidgeted with their chopsticks or sipped their sake, their discomfort palpable. Aiko noticed but pressed on, detailing the platform's capabilities, how it could analyze microexpressions, vocal tones, and even heart rate variability to predict emotional states with 92% accuracy. She spoke of her vision, a world where machines didn't just compute but connected, where technology served as a bridge rather than a barrier. The room, however, remained fractured. The translators, though skilled, couldn't capture the nuance of Aiko's words. Her metaphors, rooted in Japanese proverbs and cultural references, fell flat in English. One executive, a silver-haired man from New York named Richard Hammond, leaned back in his chair, his brow furrowed. He whispered to his colleague, "Why doesn't she just speak English? This is a global deal." Aiko caught the comment, though she gave no indication. She had heard such sentiments before, whispers that her insistence on Japanese was a power play, a way to assert dominance. They didn't understand. To Aiko, speaking her native tongue was not about control. It was about authenticity. She had spent her early career in Silicon Valley, forcing herself to adopt English to fit in, to be taken seriously. Now, as the head of a trillion-dollar company, she refused to dilute her identity. But tonight, that choice was creating a chasm. The first course arrived, delicate slices of sashimi arranged like petals on a porcelain plate. The executives murmured their appreciation, but the conversation stalled. Aiko tried to engage them, asking about their industries, their challenges. She spoke of her own journey, growing up in a small fishing village in Hokkaido, teaching herself to code on a second-hand computer and clawing her way to the top of a male-dominated industry. But her words, filtered through translators, lost their weight. The executives responded with polite platitudes, their answers clipped and cautious. By the time the second course, a steaming bowl of chawanmushi, its custard infused with uni, arrived, Aiko's frustration was mounting. She leaned forward, her voice taking on a sharper edge. "This platform," she said in Japanese, "is not just a tool. It's a philosophy. It's about understanding people, not exploiting them. In Japan, we have a saying, "Isin saki wa yami." 1 inch ahead is darkness. We must light the way with empathy, not greed. The translators faltered. One mumbled something about darkness ahead, and the executives exchanged puzzled glances. A woman from Dubai, dressed in a silk hijab, whispered to her assistant, "What does that even mean?" The room was slipping away from Aiko, and she knew it. Then a soft voice broke the tension. "Excuse me, Ms. Tanaka," said a young woman standing near the door, her tone polite but firm. All eyes turned to her. She was a waitress, no older than 25, with dark skin that contrasted sharply with her crisp white uniform. Her name tag read Maya. She held a tray of sake bottles, but her posture was confident, almost defiant. "If I may," she continued in perfect Japanese, "I believe you're saying that true progress requires us to anticipate the unknown with compassion, not just calculation. Is that correct?" Aiko froze, her chopsticks hovering over her plate. The room went silent. The clink of porcelain and the hum of conversation replaced by a stunned stillness. The executives stared at Maya, their expressions a mix of surprise and curiosity. Who was this waitress, and how did she speak Japanese with such fluency? Aiko recovered quickly, her lips curving into a faint smile. "Exactly," she said, her voice softer now. "You understand." Maya inclined her head, a gesture of respect, and stepped back to her place near the wall. But the room had shifted. The executives, suddenly aware of their own disconnect, leaned forward, their attention now split between Aiko and this unexpected newcomer. Richard Hammond, the New Yorker, raised an eyebrow. "Well, that was impressive," he said, his tone carrying a hint of skepticism. "How does a waitress in Tokyo speak Japanese like that?" Maya didn't flinch. She set down her tray and clasped her hands in front of her. "I grew up in Osaka," she said, again in flawless Japanese. "My parents were immigrants from Nigeria. They ran a small restaurant, and I learned Japanese alongside English and Yoruba. I've been speaking it since I was a child." The executives exchanged glances, their curiosity piqued. Aiko, however, saw something else in Maya, a spark of recognition, a shared understanding of what it meant to be underestimated. She gestured for Maya to approach. "Please," Aiko said, "join us for a moment. I'd like to hear your thoughts." The room bristled. Inviting a waitress to join a table of global elites was unheard of, a breach of protocol. But Aiko's tone left no room for argument. Maya hesitated, then pulled up a chair, her movements graceful but cautious. She sat at the edge of the table, her hands folded in her lap,